Hear ye, all rise. The People's Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge O'Rourke is presiding.
We have come together today to weigh evidence against U.S. Bank. The people have accused U.S. Bank of committing crimes against humanity and putting profits over people. These crimes include, but are not limited to, wrongful foreclosure practices, excessive government subsidies in the form of prepaid debit cards and student loans, theft of taxpayer funds through capital purchase program, socializing risk while privatizing profit, among others. U.S. Bank isn't alone by any stretch. They just happen to have the honor of being the only too-big-to-fail bank with branches in Taos County. We gather to weigh evidence and make a judgment. The verdict will be presented to the District Attorney of the 8th District, Donald Gallegos. Since the courts of this nation have refused to indict the banks and plutocrats that are responsible for creating the largest financial crisis since the Great Depression. We bring to you the People's Court. It is time to return the rule of law to this great nation. Today's court case is a small but necessary step in this direction. We have Jake Weil representing the people. The CEO of U.S. Bank, Richard Davis, did not respond to Occupy Taos's invitation. Is there anyone else here wishing to represent U.S. Bank? I didn't think so.
We have received no explanation as to why CEO Richard Davis did not respond to this opportunity for presenting a defense for U.S. Bank. Taos is just a small town and not likely a pressing concern for the 5th largest bank in the U.S. based on deposits. The appropriate question for the People's Court of Taos to ask is U.S. Bank a concern for Taos? With almost a third of deposits at U.S. Bank, we think the answer is yes. Fact, U.S. Bancorp received $6.6 billion from the U.S. bailout. This squarely puts them in the too big to fail category. What is clear is that U.S. Bank was the largest recipient of funds from the Fed's discount window the week of September 10th, 2008, borrowing $3.4 billion. This was the week that Lehman Brothers crashed and started the process of crashing the greater economy. The discount window is a short-term loan that the federal government makes to banking institutions to help with short-term liquidity issues. Because of the negative stigma of borrowing money from the federal government, the Fed discount window is often referred to as the lender of last resort. U.S. Bank used the Fed's discount window a total of 21 times in 2008 alone. Fact, too big to fail banks socialize the risk through the taxpayers while they privatize the rewards. If U.S. Bank fails, they get bailed out. But when they do well, they keep all the profits. Not only did U.S. Bank get bailed out, but in collusion with other banks, they tried to get the federal government from disclosing the terms of the bailout, arguing that disclosing information would competitively harm borrower banks. Fact, the implicit guarantee that they will be bailed out gives too big to fail banks an unfair competitive advantage over smaller banks.
That's right.
Big banks get to borrow money at lower fees than smaller banks. The reason for this is that too big to fail banks' debt gets higher ratings than smaller banks, which means lower fees for too big to fail banks. Smaller banks and credit unions need your participation.
Yeah! Yay!
One more reason to move your money out of U.S. Bank.
Yeah.
Last year, U.S. Bank swooped into Taos at the government's request and took over First Community's deposits. A bank that had been a key in Taos since 1922. Many Taoseños now unwillingly have their cash parked at a too-big-to-fail institution. I'd like to call Lady Liberty as my first witness. Lady Liberty, do you feel U.S. Bank is beneficial to the Taos community?
No, I do not. First Community was a local bank. The government chose not to help it and bailed out U.S. Bank instead. Local banks invest in local communities, creating a multiplier effect. U.S. Bank invests in the stock market in honorable companies as McDonald's, Walmart, Target, Philip Morris, J.P. Morgan Chase, and Wells Fargo, among others. Is Philip Morris investing in our local Taos economy? I don't think so either. U.S. Bank has investments in the tens of billions of dollars in the stock market as opposed to loaning the money to local communities where it's needed. This is a clear example of crony capitalism and our government picking winners and losers. As of September 30th, 2011, Bancorp owned 1,097 stocks in the financial sector with an aggregate market value of $4.8 billion. Last month, U.S. Bank bought $700 million in credit card loans from Bank of America, another non-local bank. This is speculative gambling. This is not investing in America's future. It's certainly not investing in Taos and the future of our community. One more reason to move your money out of U.S. Bank.
Does U.S. Bank consider itself above the law? That is why we are here today.
Well, since the CEO, Richard Davis, couldn't make it today, I thought I'd provide some insight on his position regarding the Wall Street prosecutions. During his speech at the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce this past November, he said, quote, "Everybody is breaking the rules. Blah, blah, blah. It's time everyone gets over it." Meanwhile, his bank, U.S. Bank, is spending more and more money every year on lobbying to weaken banking rules so banks like his can rip the people off even more.
Shame! Shame!
Shame! So in your opinion, Lady Liberty, would you say that U.S. Bank is helping or hurting our economy?
It is hurting without a doubt.
Yes.
U.S. Bank spent 7 times the amount of lobbying in 2009 compared to 2010. Richard Davis has a long history of lobbying the U.S. government to weaken rules affecting the banking industry. For years, he headed the Financial Services Roundtable. This roundtable opposes things like reduced fees on debit cards and supports things like dismantling the Consumer Financial Protection Bill. This is one of the few laws that provides basic consumer protection against the almost unchecked banks. U.S. Bank is an active member of the Financial Services Roundtable, not to mention that all the money spent on lobbying to weaken banking rules could have been used to help people in danger of losing their homes.
Yes. Thank you for your testimony, Lady Liberty.